Good morning, scholars. So today we're going to be making the Math Magician app. It's just going to be a really basic app that'll allow you to add and subtract numbers, and if we have time, you'll add multiplication and division. Before we get into that, this recording software, you should be able to see my cursor here, and if I left click, it should be you should see blue, and if I right click or control click, you should see red. Just a heads up on that. So what we're going to do first is we got to go to MIT App Inventor. And on Google Classroom, you'll see here, MIT App Inventor. You go ahead and click on it, and you open up that link. This is MIT App Inventor main page. What you're going to do is you're going to go to Create Apps, and you're going to log in with Google. Mine's not going to do that because I'm already logged in. It might actually. There we go. So, select your school account, and it should log you in. And first off, yours won't look like this, right? Let's go to My Projects. Yours is going to look blank unless you've done this before. You have My Projects here. What we're going to do first is you're going to start a new project, and you're just going to call it Math Magician or your Math App, whatever. As long as you know it's a math app, you're good. You can't have any spaces in there, heads up. And you hit OK. And then it'll pop up and it'll show you this screen here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the main parts of this screen. All right, so this screen here of MIT App Inventor is where you create the user interface of the application. This is what the user is going to be seeing. On the left here, you got the palette. All right, so you can see the palette is where you find all of your components to add to your app. You've got buttons, checkboxes, images, labels, etc., etc. We also have layouts, which we'll get to in a little bit. We have media, you have drawing and animation, maps, sensors, so there's a whole bunch. Today we're going to be using a lot of the user interface and as well as the layout stuff. In the middle here is where the actual app is seen. That's where the user's actually going to be, that's where you're going to see what the user sees essentially. And we'll drag stuff from the palette here to here in order to place where we want it to be. Just to the right of that over here, you've got components. This is where a list of components will show up as you put them into your app, and we'll get to that later. And then finally, you have properties of each component over here. So right now, these properties, because I have screen 1 component selected, these are the properties of screen 1. So if I want to change the background color of screen 1, let's go ahead and do that first. I'm going to change the background color to just whatever you want, really. I'm going to go custom, and I'm going to go with a nice, let's go with purple. And I'm going to hit done, and then boom, I changed my background of my application. So what we're going to do first is our plan here is to make a math app where the user can add and subtract numbers. So first we have to create the user interface, and we're using tablets here. So I'm going to first go to screen 1. I'm going to put, I'm going to go to the right here after I have screen 1 selected. I'm going to change the sizing to responsive, which will allow me to change the size of this. And I'm going to go with tablet size for now. Depending on how it looks like on the actual tablet when you test it later, you may have to change some stuff around, but we're going to go with this for now. First thing we want to do is we want to put text up here that says, Math Magician or Math or something like that. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to go and find a label over in the palette. Scroll up a little bit here. I'm going to click and hold and drag it over here. And boom, there is my label, right? It says text for label 1. And if I select it in the component screen, I can see all these properties. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to make the text bigger. 75, let's go with 75. I'm going to change the text to Math Magician. And it says Math Magician, right? And I can even bold it. I can italicize it. There's one issue here, though, is it looks like it's kind of going to the left, right? It's all over here. We have some extra space over here. That's really... you can really tell if I make the font size smaller, right? If I put that back down to a smaller size. It's up in the corner here. We kind of want it in the middle, right? Because it's the title. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to screen 1. I'm going to change the properties of screen 1 after I click on it. And I'm going to do align horizontal center. So horizontally, right, meaning from left to right, horizontal, like the horizon, right, the flat x-axis. It's aligning that in the center of the x-axis. So now it says Math Magician in the middle of our app, which is great. Now what we need to do is we need to add a layout. All right, and layouts allow us to kind of space things, move things around, put things in specific boxes, essentially, to make it easier for us to actually organize our user interface. And what I'm going to do actually first is I'm just going to grab an arrangement, and it doesn't really matter which one I grab at this point. I'm going to grab one, plop it over here, right? Just click and drag, and I'm going to put it right there, and I'm just going to make the height of it, right, the up and down of it, 5%. And I'm going to just use that as a spacer, really, right? So now when I put another horizontal arrangement right below that, it's going to be pushed down a little bit, and it's going to give us some breathing room between the text and what the buttons and stuff we're going to put here, all right? And what I'm going to do with this horizontal arrangement 2, actually, is I'm going to click on horizontal arrangement 2, change my properties, and I'm going to change the width to fill parent, and that means it's going to fill the entire screen, all right? And I'm also going to align everything I put in this box. I want to be aligned horizontal center, so it's in the middle of the box, and align vertical center, meaning it'll be in the middle of the very middle of the box, no matter what I put, right? So if I go and grab a button, right, it puts it in the middle of the box, right? And actually what we're going to do is we've got a button there, right? That's great. That's where we actually wanted a button there. We're going to rename that button. So if you didn't put a button in there, put a button in there. I'm going to rename that button. I'm going to call it Add Subtract Button. And it's very important that we name these things, and you'll see in a second once we get to the coding. But I'm just going to call it, this is the Add Subtract button. This is going to be the button that allows us to change from addition to subtraction. And I'm just going to make the text of it a plus sign, right? So Shift, and then the button right next to the backspace you'll see is the plus sign. I want to make it bigger, obviously. 75 would probably be pretty good. And I'm gonna bold it. And then there's a button. And I'm gonna make the background color of it actually none, which means it'll show the background color of the screen, which means all of this will be purple actually. Even though this shows as gray here, the horizontal arrangement background color is default, which means the background of it will be whatever the background is essentially, right? So it's going to be that. I didn't even have to change that to, I could have just left it as default. And now we need to add places where the user can actually put their numbers, right? So we got a plus sign, and it's going to be a button, and you'll see why it's a button later. We're going to add on the left here, a text box. There it is. I'm going to put a text box there. I'm going to put a text box there. Right, so now I can put numbers in here actually. And I'm going to make the font size of these bigger. I'm going to go for 45. You can't really see what's in there unless you put something in there, right? I'm going to put the word test. Right, that's a pretty good size, I think. And then I'm also going to make it numbers only. That'll make the coding easier. Because if we didn't make it numbers only, it means users could put in letters, and then when we put the code in there, it's going to try and add and subtract letters. It's not going to know what to do, and it's going to give an error. So if we restrict it to numbers, it'll be easier. So we've got this number plus this number. We need an equals, right? So we're going to need what I'm actually going to do is we're going to have to add some spacing between here. So I'm going to take an arrangement, and I'm going to put it in between the text box and this button here. I'm going to make the width of it 5. I'm going to do the same thing here. Width 5. So I got those two arrangements. Those are going to act as spacers. Otherwise, and I'm not even testing this right now, but I know, having used this program before, it'll smush everything really close together and it'll look weird. All right. What I'm going to do next is I need to get over to the right here, and I can't really see what's over here. That's kind of an issue. We could change it to monitor size if you really wanted to. It may look different on your guys' computers. I'll change it to monitor size for now, just for simplicity's sake. But if you couldn't, right, if you were over here on tablet size and monitor size didn't work for whatever reason, you could click on this text box and make it invisible for a little bit, so you can start putting stuff over here, and then once you have whatever's over here, you can make it visible again. But we're just going to go with monitor size here. I'm going to add another spacer, really, with, again, 5%. And then I'm going to have a label. So I'm going to go back to user interface and grab a label. All right, and this label is going to say equals. I'm going to put space. And I'm not going to put anything after that. I'm just going to have it say equals. And we'll make it the same size as whatever this is. This is 75, right? Yeah. I'm going to make that text box, the fonts of that label 75, and I'm going to bold it as well. And then really that's all we need really right now. I'm going to go back to tablet size. I know you can't see that over there. It's still there. That's fine. The tablets we're using are actually a little bit bigger, so you'll be able to see that. But this is the components we're going to use. We got text box, we got a button here, and we have another text box that the user can enter another number, and then an equal label. So essentially what hopefully the user can do is they can put a text box here, they can put a number in this text box here, a number in this text box here, and then when they hit a calculate button, which we're going to put right down here, and we're going to change the text of that calculate, it's going to add those numbers together, right? And I'm going to make this font bigger as well. And I'm actually going to add another layout here and make that height 5, just so as a spacer. And it'll make, trust me, it'll make everything else look a lot better in the actual end game here. So that's basically all we need. When the user hits calculate, we want the code to add the number in this box with the number in this box and put it into this label here, and it'll tell you. So what we need to do is we need to label this stuff first. We need to know what it is. So I'm going to rename this text box 1 to, I'm going to call it add sub text 1. So addition, subtraction, text 1, add sub text 2. So I know what those are when I'm coding them. I'm going to call this the result label. Add sub, right? Because add sub result label, right? And I know it seems kind of crazy. I'm being so specific, but it makes a lot of difference when you're adding a whole bunch of stuff. And then finally, we need to rename this to the calculate button. All right, so we've got our user interface. Just ignore that. We've got our user interface here, and it has everything we needed to do, right? So we got the 2 text boxes where users can input their numbers. We have a result label. We have a button where the user can change it from addition to subtraction, and we have a calculate button. So we're going to go to what is now where we're going to do the programming, right? So we go to blocks here. You click on it, and it opens up the blocks screen. So the big white space is where you'll do the coding. All right, and it's block-based, so it's not the most complicated thing. It's not like you have to type everything out. On the left here is where you get your blocks. All right, so you've got the generic blocks. You've got control blocks, which tell the app that it's going to do something. Logic, math, text, lists, etc., etc. And we'll get these as we use them. And then below this, right, you have screen 1, and you have the components that we just placed on the design screen. So here's our add subtract button, right? Here's the add subtext 2 label. This is why we named the things so we knew what they were. What we're going to do first is we want to go back to the design screen real quick, look at this. We want this button, when it's clicked, to change it to a subtract button. And then when it's a subtract button, when it's clicked, we want the user to be able to hit it and change it back to addition. So when the user clicks this button, it's going to change from whatever symbol it's on to the opposite symbol, basically. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the add subtract button here. We're going to grab the click event handler. An event handler is just something that tells the app that, hey, the user wants to do something, right? So when the add subtract button dot click, right, when that button is clicked, we want this to change from a plus to a minus. Now you could just say when the button is clicked, change the plus to a minus. We could do that. But we have to take into account if it says minus, we want it to change into a plus. So it needs to go back and forth. And to solve that, we're going to use an if-then block. All right. So we're going to say if, right, if the button's text and I'm going to grab this, right? Add subtract button text, right, is equal to. So I'm going to find a math, and I'm going to find equal. Math button, I'm going to track that to the if. So if the add subtract button text is equal to, I'm going to grab a blank text box here. If it's equal to plus, so if it says plus, right, when the button clicks, if the add subtract button shows the plus symbol, we want the add subtract button. We want to set the add subtract button's text. So set add subtract button text to, I'm going to grab another empty text box here, minus. So I put a minus there. So when that button is clicked, right, if it says plus, it's going to change it to a minus, right? Now, what if it says minus? This is where we get a little bit more complicated. We're going to grab that little cog there, we're going to click on it, and we're going to add an else, right? So if it says plus, it's going to set to minus. If it doesn't say plus, right, so it's going to say if it's plus. It says no, it doesn't say plus, it says minus. It's going to skip directly to the else, which means I'm going to control click on this or right click, depending on the mouse you're using. I'm going to change that to plus. So if the add subtract button is equal to plus, then change it to minus. If not, change it back to plus. This will allow the user to click on this button continuously and change it from plus to minus. All right. So we've got that done. When they click on that button, you can go in and test that if you want from Hit Connect and AI Companion. You can test it. So we got that, right? Now we need to calculate it. So when the calculate button is clicked, right, we need it to say, okay, if this says plus on it, we need to add those together and then spit that result out. All right, let me go to monitor size. Spit that result out here to this label, right? If it says minus, it needs to minus those two and put it onto this label. Right? And the label already has that as well. It already says equals space. And we need to keep that as well, which is important. So we need to do this. We're going to grab another if-then block, right? If, and I'm going to steal this, right? I'm going to control click on this and duplicate, or right click. If the add subtract button text is equal to plus, then we're going to set the result label, so add result label, text to, we need to join. So we want the text label to say equals space, and then we want to do the math for it. So I'm going to grab math, I'm going to grab plus, and we're going to just take the subtext, the add subtext text box right there, and I'm just going to duplicate that and change it to add subtext 2. So now when you hit the calculate button, it says, okay, if the add subtract button is set to plus, it's going to set that result label to say equal space, and then it's going to do the math from those two text boxes. All right, it's going to put it right there, equals space, and then the number. Now what if it says minus? Simple. I'm just going to control click or right click on this one. I'm going to duplicate. If add subtract button that text is equal to minus, then we want to change this, right? I'm going to grab the new math component, minus. I'm going to put it in here. Then I can just highlight this, hit backspace, or drag it over to the trash can. There we go. So now that works. So when the calculate button hits, when the calculate button is clicked, if the button says plus, it adds them together and puts it into that text box. If it says minus, it subtracts them and puts them into that text box. And that's basically it. Now is you need to open up your student portfolio that's on Classroom. Okay, and I have an example right here. Okay, go to Day 2, Intro to Programming. And we've already done these, hopefully, this morning. Okay, Math Magician application. We got to put your user interface here and your code here. So how do we do that? So how to get pictures? First off, go back to here, go to your designer, get a picture of your code or of your user interface, right? So it's going to be Command-Shift-4, right? On your guys' computers, I'm using Windows, so I'm going to use the snipping tool, which is a little bit different. But if you hit Command-Shift-4, your cursor will change to a little, I'm going to change it back to tablet, to a little like crosshair, and then all you gotta do is drag. It'll look kind of like this. Drag across there, all right, and boom, there it is, right? And it'll be on your desktop because I'm on a PC. This is different. You just go back to your student portfolio, and then you upload. You go to images, so insert images, upload, and you upload them from your computer, right? It'll be on the desktop. I'm going to just copy this from here, and I'll paste it into here. And then there you go. There's my user interface. I can put it right there, make it look a little bit better. Smush this around a little bit. The computer's a little slow today because of this. Internet's not doing super good, right? And then I want you to explain what you did to the user interface, right? So my user interface, right, has two text boxes for the user to input their numbers. It has a button so they can change the plus and minus, and it has a calculate button, right? You could say how you align stuff, but you need to talk a little bit, at least 2-3 sentences, explaining user interface, and then you got to do the code, right? So we go back to the thing. You hit do Command Shift 4 again, right? It'll bring up the little crosshairs, highlight your code, right? And then just upload it from your desktop. Again, mine looks different because I'm using a PC. Upload it from your desktop. There's your code, and then explain it, right? So my the top code allows users to change the addition, subtraction symbol, blah, 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 right? The bottom code allows the user to calculate depending on if they have addition or subtraction left, and then it puts it into the text box. I want you to get literal with it, right? What does the code do specifically, right? When the calculate button is clicked, if it says this, it does this. If it does this, it does this, right? When this is clicked, what does it do? And you need to explain, all right? So that's basically it. Just make sure your portfolio looks good. Make sure you have that all tight and square and good looking.